All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College coming to you with an introductory lecture for AWD1111, which is .NET Framework with Web Databases, which is part of the Rankin Technical College Application and Web Development, or AWD program. The way that I plan on teaching this class, this is an FYI, and I've been going around and around and around and around with this as far as how I can teach it. But the plan right now is probably just the first day. I'm going to go over this folder here that says 01 through 04 Introductory Material. There are a few articles in there. The first one is, it's about 8 years old, and this is a very high-level general article on Model View Controller. As you can see, it's called MVC for noobs. Noobs is the way that, a lot of people say newbie type of thing. You'll notice that it is more than 8 years old. That said, there are points that are in here that I think, talk about Model View Controller in a general way, that it's a good place to start. After that, I'm going to go into this right here, which is actually from msdn.microsoft.com, which is the Microsoft Developer Network. It's a very short little article, 3 pages, with an ASP.NET MVC overview. So I will go over that second. There's also it goes along but not directly. There is a PDF that goes through the ASP.NET MVC application lifecycle. We'll talk a little bit about the first page. The second page is so small, so hard to read, that I'm just going to let you take a look at that on your own. Then after we get done with that, we're going to go through this article that I found on codeproject.com. Again, a little bit older article. It's about 5 years old as opposed to 8, but it's called An Absolute Beginner's Tutorial on ASP.NET MVC for Web Forms Developers. So this tutorial assumes that you already know or have been using ASP.NET Web Forms. I do realize we haven't been doing that in this class because, if for no other reason, it'll be the beginning of the class. But it'll give me a chance to give you, hopefully, some historical perspective on the AWD1111 class. All right, and then finally, the book that I used for this class, AWD1111, .NET Framework with Web Databases, that I used literally a year ago, so in fall of 2017, when I taught the class, was a book by Muroc that is called Muroc's ASP.NET 4.6 with C# 2015. A very well-written book. The problem with it is this class has been gravitating towards being a class in ASP.NET MVC or Model View Controller. Only chapter 25 out of a 25-chapter book was on MVC. So in other words, 96% of the book was not on MVC. But again, it's got a lot of very good salient beginning introductory points on ASP.NET MVC. So I plan on going over that stuff on the first day. All right. Then, Part 5 says ASP.NET MVC getting started. Let me go over to here. All right. If you look up on the screen here, this says ASP.NET MVC getting started. There are 3 series of articles here. The first one, which has about 11 articles, is called Getting Started with ASP.NET MVC 5. And that actually will be the first one that I'll be going over. As you can see, it says Getting Started, adding a controller, adding a view, adding a model, creating a connection string and working with SQL Server Local DB, accessing your model's data from a controller, examining the edit methods and edit view, adding search, adding a new field, adding validation, and examining the details and delete methods. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different articles, or whatever you want to say. We're going to go over all of those. That should take approximately a period. It may take a period and a half. I don't know. All right. After that, for now, we're going to skip this one. Getting started with EF6 using MVC5, we're going to jump down to the next one, which is EF database first with ASP.NET MVC. That is a 7 article. It's a series of 7 articles. The first, getting started with Entity Framework 6, database first, using MVC5. Then creating the web application and data models, followed by generating views, followed by changing the database, followed by customizing a view, followed by enhancing data validation, followed by publishing to Azure. So I'd like to go over that. Then we'll jump back into here. Now, gotta warn you, this series of articles in here, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 article series, getting started with EF6, which is the Entity Framework version 6, using MVC5, it's much, much, much more extensive than the other two. This one actually has these 12 lessons as a 250-page PDF that goes over creating an entity framework data model, implementing basic CRUD or create, read, update, delete functionality, sorting, filtering, and paging, connection, resiliency, and command interception, code first migrations and deployment, creating a more complex data model, reading related data, updating related data, async and stored procedures, handling concurrency, implementing inheritance, and advanced entity framework scenarios. So as mentioned, the plan is to first go through this getting started, then to go through the EF database first. So the getting started has got 11 parts to it. The EF database first has got 7 parts to it. All right. And then we'll jump back into the getting started here, and that has 12 parts to it. And these 12 parts are also in a 250-page PDF. So in an ideal world, we'll be able to go through all of this stuff in week 1. The biggest problem with that is that with most people, you get back from your break, etc., and you're not like really into, oh yeah, I'm doing fine, etc. Let's go and do a bunch of stuff today. Well, what I plan on doing is in day 1, going over this introductory material that I mentioned to you. Then in days 2 and 3, going over these 11 lessons. So that'll be Tuesday and Wednesday. Then in days 4 and 5, which will be Thursday and Friday, go over these. And then spend the next week just Monday and let's say Monday and Tuesday and going over these. Now, the plan is not that I'm going to be able to go over each of these in 2 days and boom, they're going to make total sense to you and you're going to understand 100% of the material. The chances of that happening probably are not very good, but it's okay. It's an introduction so that by Wednesday of the second week, day 8, we could go into our textbook. And our textbook is ASP.NET MVC with Entity Framework and CSS. That textbook, as you can see in here, it has, oh my goodness, I believe it's about, there's 13, 17, 18 chapters it looks like. All right. Some of the stuff, such as at the beginning, we'll be able to go over relatively quickly. All right. this building a basic website is literally all they have you do is just to create a new project. We can go through that in a matter of minutes. Chapter 2, creating views and controllers, it'll get into it in more depth and breadth of coverage. The idea in this book, what will happen is we will be creating a database-driven website using C#, ASP.NET, and the Model View Controller framework. All right, along as it says with the Entity framework and using some CSS to make sure that it looks professional. All right, I've also come up with a bunch of things. These are PDFs, and I'm going to open each one of them, and this will be the first and only time I'm going to open each one of these. This first one says ASP.NET Mvc, and it's a thing I found online, written by some Microsoft developer, and it's about 114 PowerPoints. All right, I'm not going to go over any of it, but it's there in case you need another reference. All right, second, this is called ASP.NET Mvc Tutorial. 305 pages from tutorials point. We look through the table of contents, ASP.NET Mvc Overview, ASP.NET Mvc Getting Started, ASP.NET Mvc Lifecycle, ASP.NET Mvc Routing, ASP.NET Mvc Controllers, ASP.NET Mvc Actions, ASP.NET Mvc Filters, ASP.NET Mvc Selectors, ASP.NET Mvc Views, ASP.NET Mvc Data Model, ASP.NET Mvc Helpers, ASP.NET Mvc Model Binding, ASP.NET Mvc Databases, ASP.NET Mvc Validation, ASP.NET Mvc Security, ASP.NET Mvc Caching, ASP.NET Mvc Razor, ASP.NET Mvc Data Annotations, ASP.NET Mvc NuGet Package Management, boy this is long, ASP.NET Mvc Web API, ASP.NET Mvc Scaffolding, ASP.NET Mvc Bootstrap, ASP.NET Mvc Unit Testing, ASP.NET Mvc Deployment, ASP.NET Mvc Self-Hosting. That's it. Again, it's provided for you as yet another reference, and that's all it is. All right, next we've got a thing from Sync Fusion, 85 pages, called ASP.NET Mvc Succinctly. Again, about 85 pages in length. 2015, so not old. All right. An overview, MVC says hello. The world says hello back. Don't trust everything the world says. MVC meets jQuery. MVC scaffolding. And further reading. So, none of these by themselves are going to teach you everything there is. The idea is I'd rather throw a boatload of stuff at you and do it like that. All right? I've also found a few regular big textbooks. This one here is called, I don't know why it's showing me the back instead of the front, but it is. All right. Pro ASP.NET Mvc. They create a project in here. Not the book we're going to use, but just so you see it, you have that available to you now. Professional ASP.NET Mvc. This is written by John Galloway, who's a bigwig pretty much for Microsoft. All right. And then when you look in here, again, you'll notice. All right. I'm not going to read this. but there's a lot of material in it. All right. And finally, programming ASP.NET MVC5, a problem solution approach. I found this online by Namit Joshi. I don't know anything about it. All right. Getting started, databases, editing. All right. External authentication, entity framework, database first, hosting, and an introduction to Signal R. Don't know if it's a good book or not, but again, I just thought I'd provide a boatload of information to you. The last thing I wanted to mention, and I'm going to YouTube this, and I'm going to call this, I'm going to make a check in here for Microsoft ASP.NET MVC. All right, and this is the one here. I'm going to give you this URL. In fact, I'm going to do it right now because otherwise I'll forget. And this is a URL for the Microsoft Virtual Academy. And the name of this is that's actually what I want. So there we go. Introduction to ASP.NET MVC. All right, and I'm going to grab that particular URL. Instead of the one that I had. All right, and what you'll notice when you look through this, the basics. All right, creating power of Visual Studio, controllers, views, and an introduction to Bootstrap. In fact, if you look right here at the gentleman that's right here, I don't want to go through any of this other than to show you that's John Galloway, who's the author of one of the books that I showed you. The other guy, his name is, I can't remember his name, it's Chris something or other. He's unbelievably knowledgeable. All right, got a very different sense of humor. All right, you've been warned, but this is good. All right, and the very last thing I want to tell you about in this is you probably know this, but on the off chance you don't, Microsoft's ASP.NET website is ASP.NET. Now, the newest version of using MVC is something that's called MVC or just .NET Core. I don't believe we're going to be using any of that because it's 2017 and above, plus that's not really covered in much depth and breadth of coverage in our textbook. Now, that's not totally true because notice that if I look at this, blow this up a bit, what do we have? Building a basic website, creating views, controllers in the database, searching, advanced filtering and view models, more advanced data management, sorting, paging, and routing, managing images, authentication and authorization, creating a shopping basket, checkout, advanced scenarios, using Entity Framework Code first. There it is, Chapter 12. One chapter, about 15 pages. An introduction to ASP.NET Core 1.0. So we will talk about it. Then there's deploying to Azure, restyling the website, and styling the homepage. I think that's it. Oh, styling forms, grid layouts, and tables, advanced CSS, and making it responsive. All right. We have a pretty doggone big task ahead of us. I think we can do it. So, as the saying goes, let's get started.